This is the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast, where we teach you the proven methods to grow your seven-figure business to 10 million and beyond. Please welcome your host, Brett Gilliland.
Welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast. Every week we bring great guests with us, business owners who have been there, done that, who have seven-figure businesses or who have scaled well into seven figures and beyond. Today is no exception. My guest is Katie Harris. Katie has two businesses that we're going to talk about today, or at least two businesses. She is the co-owner of Get Found First and Spot On Solutions. Get Found First is a Google Premier partner managed agency, and they manage ad spend for over 600 companies in all industries. In 2020, 2021, and 2022, Get Found First was named to that prestigious Inc. 5000 list as a fastest growing privately held company in the United States. And more importantly to me, something I geek out about is that you all have been named in the top 10 best places to work in Idaho, off and on for several years, I think. Anyway, we'll talk more about that. In addition to the great things that have happened in your businesses, Katie is a certified John Maxwell leadership coach, certified on DISC. She does lots of great things, including volunteer work for court-appointed special advocate is the volunteer role that she does for children in foster care. She wrote a book. She was part of a group that wrote a book called Uncommon Results. And Katie wrote the chapter on Believe in Big Things. And so if you want to hear more about Katie or read her bio more in depth, please check out the show notes. Well, let me officially welcome you, Katie, to our podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. It's always fun to visit with you. I had so much fun even before we started recording, catching up with you a little bit.
Yeah, it's great. And the reason I'm excited about having you here is that you have done so much and you bring a ton of energy and passion to topics that we hold very dear here at Elite Entrepreneurs, and that will be very instructive here for our listeners today. So let's jump in. Tell us about starting up two businesses in, what did you call it? East Rural Idaho or something like that?
We're in such a rural part of East Idaho that, matter of fact, for a long time, people are like, you're from Idaho, right? You do that in Blackfoot? Google comes to Blackfoot? And yeah, we do it right here. We were hidden away for a while, but we love it. The two businesses.
So you have the two businesses you started up about the same time.
And I will tell you right now, I am an absolute accidental entrepreneur. Like that, there was no plan. There was no big plan to go start a business. My whole background is in traditional media, in journalism. And then I raised three kids. And when my youngest kid started school, I went back to work at a newspaper. And that's where I met Michael Johnson, one of my business partners. And he was young and smart and way into digital. And I just fell in love with digital and everything you could do. So literally followed him out of a building one day, told him he should hire me. And that started us on our road to where we are today.
That's so great. And then tell us about, so that's Get Found First. Tell us about Spot On Solutions.
So Spot On Solutions, we do the same thing. So we're a digital marketing agency. We build websites, we run Google Ads, do your SEO, Facebook marketing. And one of our clients owned a cleaning and restoration business. And Derek is his name. And he was a very big skeptic when it came to digital, but all of a sudden he started to get really good results. So what do? We get really good results. We refer our friends. And before we knew it, we were working with so many cleaning and restoration companies that the entrepreneur in Derek kicked in, and he's like, wait a minute, like, let's just do this for this industry. And so we set up a vertical company called Spot On Solutions, and we now work with over 250 companies throughout the United States that are in the service industry. So cleaning, restoration, HVAC, roofing.
Got it. Okay, very good. Similar work, but that's the vertical version of it.
Yep.
All right. Well, now that we know a little bit about you, let's learn about some of the lessons that you've learned, the wisdom you've accumulated over the years of scaling these businesses. And you know this, but I'm just going to repeat for everybody here that we're not, even though we honor it immensely, we're not going to talk about that hard stage of starting and growing from 0 to 1 million, or going from just a couple partners to, 8, 10, 12 people. We're going to talk about what happens once you hit that 7-figure mark, thereabouts, and some of the new challenges you got to figure out so that you can keep growing. So being on that Inc. 5000 list is amazing one time, but being on there year after year is another thing. And so we want to learn about some of the growth or scaling challenges and what you figured out that helps you keep going through those.
Yeah, you bet. Well, one of the things I learned early is the first time we went to like our first Fortune 500 company, and we were so worried about it. I remember we prepped like crazy. We were so ready. We flew to Miami, went in to visit with this Fortune 500 company, and we had prepared so much stuff thinking they were going to have such different challenges than everybody else we worked with. And I remember when we walked in there and we started talking to them, and they're telling us they have the same marketing questions that small businesses had. And Michael and I had this big light bulb moment where we're like, their challenges are the same. They're just on such a bigger scale. And that lesson has stuck with me as we've grown these companies, because I remember what it felt like to go from 3 employees to 10 employees to 20 employees, right? Same challenges, but then you get to 60 employees, same challenges. It's just on a much bigger scale. And so I think one of the things I wish I had learned faster that I'm still trying to catch up to is the value of systems in your business. Because when you're going to scale anything, those systems become so mission critical to being able to do it successfully.
Well, I love that as like an overarching principle or lesson that systems are essential to scaling. Can we get a little more specific about ones that you found to be especially crucial for your ability to go from 3 to 10 to 20 to 60 people? Maybe we talk about some of those people systems that have helped.
Yeah, you bet. Well, one of the people systems is just how we hire, who we hire, how we hire, right? And that all goes to culture. So I know, we spent a ton of time with you trying to identify what our vision is, what our purpose is, how you articulate that. And that to us, that happened for us when we were just past the $1 million mark. Honestly, we grew to $1 million before we could even clearly articulate what our vision was. And then we hit these like road bumps, and it's like, how do we go forward? How do we do this? How do we attract the right people? And I remember we came to Arizona and we met with you and Dan, sat in a class, and I just remember trying to get our vision like really articulated. And Dan kept saying to us, I don't buy it. Nope, I don't believe it. Sell me, right? And we just worked and worked. And when we left that class that day, we had 4 words that were our vision. And that became like our mantra in recruiting. And so the system and how we recruited and how we put culture into that helped us start to attract the people we wanted here. And we couldn't just do it willy-nilly, right? All of a sudden, it can't just be like, oh yeah, we need more people, go hire. We had to figure out, okay, how can you kind of project when you're going to need to scale so that you can have enough people, on the bus and that know how to do the job in time to, take the work. So you have to figure out, what does your growth trajectory look like so that you can plan, how many people do I need to have? When do I need to start hiring? How do I have to have them trained so that I can have them ready to do the work as the sales come in?
That's awesome that you guys figured that out when you did, because every business has to. And there's this silly little, or it's frustrating sometimes, little balancing act where it's like, do I bring them in before I actually need them? I can't afford to do that. But if I wait too long, then, the client success or the client experience suffers because I don't have everybody there. And so there's this expense fulfillment thing, this little dance we're trying to do to just get it right. And so it sounds like you guys did some work to get your vision in place so that you knew what type of people to get lined up. And then you had to do some other work maybe to figure out the frequency or the timing of when to bring them in.
Yeah. And you know what? And we couldn't figure that out on our own. We'd never done that before. I mean, we never ran a $1 million business before. We'd never had that many people. We didn't know how to do it. And so I think that one of the most critical things is we just went and found people that did know how to do that. And We could have figured it out, right? But it would have taken us a really long time and we would have really screwed it up in the process. And so, as soon as we kind of figure out what that pain point looks like, and like you can tell when you hit those growth points in your business, like I got to do something different. Like this was working. This is not working now. Well, I got to do something different. And it's every time we hit those that I feel like, okay, it's time to reach out to a coach. All right, it's time to reach out to a coach because I don't know how to get to the next place I need to be. And so that whole coaching routine almost like it flows. It's like, okay, coach, learn, implement, and then coach again, right? Implement. And that never stops. And I think that wheel never stops. And also this wheel of sell, hire, train, right? That wheel never stops either because I'm either in a high sell mode, a high recruiting mode, or a high training mode. But at any given time, those two wheels just have to keep turning.
Yeah, I love that you called out the coaching thing, not because that's how I spend my time, but because I learned the same thing in our experience at Keep with Clayt. He would always put it this way. He said, I'm not the CEO today that the business needs me to be 12 months from now. But by the time we get there, you can count on the fact that I will be, right? It's kind of like I have to keep pushing and growing myself so that we collectively can go where we're trying to go. Yeah. And I think that's true of the leadership collectively, but it's especially true for the founder CEOs, right? The co-founders, those that are trying to take this somewhere. They have to keep pushing themselves in order to level up the business. So it's a great comment. And
I'm always reminded my team, right? Like, hey, be patient with me. I've never done this before, right? When we hit those phases like that, I'm like, hey, just remember, I've never done this before. And that really, I guess, I've also learned as the team gets bigger and the company gets bigger, and I get a little bit more distance from people, right? I don't see everybody every single day. I try to talk to them, but sometimes I'm like, man, it's 4:00 in the afternoon. I haven't even said hi to that person yet, But that idea of, letting yourself be a little bit vulnerable and just be like, hey, I'm trying to figure it out. And they respond to that, right? And there's a little bit of grace that gets granted when it's like, okay, yeah, this isn't working great, but they know it's not working great, right? They're working on it. They're growing too. And I love that. I love that kind of atmosphere where they see me and Michael and Derek and our leadership team working to get better, working to figure things out, because I think it makes it a little bit safer for them to say like, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing. I've never done this before. And there's that grace to work to figure it out.
Yeah. And I love that you're using words like atmosphere, vulnerability, grace. I mean, these are very fuzzy types of concepts, but they are the things that enable a team of people to come together in a very healthy way to co-create a future together. And it seems like it's working really well for you guys. So well done. I want to go back to something that you referenced. You kind of glossed over something that should be very familiar with people who are listening, but I want to like call out the specifics if we can. So you said, as we're growing, we get to those sticking points or those stopping points, and you kind of go, man, I got to figure out what's next. Mm-hmm. I got to figure out how to go to the next thing. I'd like to sit for just a minute on how you're hitting one of those spots. What is it that you're experiencing that's not working right? Because something's off, but let's get more specific about what's off. How do you start to see that?
Well, first of all, those spots suck. Yeah, right? Those spots are not fun. It's kind of like, I don't know, how do you say when something is bad? Like you just know it, right? Yeah. And really what happens is when I start to hear myself or my people, my team complaining about the same things, right? Like we're just constantly banging our heads against the same problem, or I'm running into the same complaint and I don't have a solution for it. That's a pretty good red flag hey, we better look at this. And maybe this worked at one point in time, but it's not working right now. What's not working? And I think you have to get you need to be fast to get curious. And what that looks like, I think, is, hey, you got to sit down with a lot of different people in a lot of different spaces and ask some really good questions so that you can start to see. The first thing you get is like pain, right? Like people are complaining, something doesn't feel good. And then it's like, okay, now I got to get curious and ask some questions and figure out what that is. Because I find that a lot of times the first thing I go to is not what the actual problem is. I got to go a couple layers deeper to figure out, okay, what's actually broken here, or what actually needs changed here is different than what it looks like at first glance.
So I love that you mentioned very outward focused of, I'm hearing complaints or a pattern of frustration from other people around problems that are recurring, or things that we used to have figured out and went smoothly and now they're not, right? Like those are pretty tangible examples of things that start to happen when you get in that funky, no fun place. What about if you turn it to you? What do you notice in yourself when you're in that place, or what are any red flags in yourself that come up?
Yeah. Well, those same things, like I'll hear myself maybe say something negative. That's a red flag for me. I'm like, if I'm feeling like that, I guarantee you other people are feeling like that, right? If that's my reaction to something, I guarantee you it's somewhere else, right? We have, one of our values is that we face challenges with optimism. So it's very core to who we are. Like, we face challenges with optimism. Yeah, things are going to be hard. Sometimes things aren't going to work, but we're going to be really optimistic about it. For me personally, if I hear myself start to be negative about stuff, that's my big red flag. I'm not a negative person by nature. I'm just a pretty optimistic person. But if I hear myself saying things or feeling negative, I know I've got a huge red flag for myself, because if I'm that way, I guarantee you the problem goes a lot further.
So that's a red flag. And then you talked about getting curious fast, right? It's like, okay, I got to figure out what's going on here. Yeah.
Some of the biggest mistakes I think I've made along the way are making assumptions. I assume I know why somebody decided to quit, right? And I'm wrong. We had somebody who worked for us, and he was awesome. He was a great member of our team. And we knew he had some other things going on, and we weren't overly happy with him at that moment, but he gave his notice and he quit. And we were just like, all right, fine, good riddance. I kind of saw the writing on the wall, right? Well, it was a big reality check when we sat down and we did his exit interview with him and asked him some questions. And I'm like, I was wrong. Like, I was wrong. I did not have all the right information. And if I had asked better questions sooner, would have handled this situation totally different. And so to just lose assumptions about things, right? Especially like really detailed things like performance that's happening with people. Like, I assume I know what's breaking in something, but I'm not in doing the work every single day. I don't know that stuff. And so just got to ask questions and ask good questions, right? And so that to me, that ability to get curious instead of get defensive, make assumptions, jump the gun, it really forces you to slow it down a little bit, which I don't know other DI personality styles, but we're pretty quick to just take action, jump in, solve a problem, move on. And that tends to, mean you don't solve everything when you do it that fast. And so when you get curious, pause long enough to ask some good questions, you just make better decisions. You get better information, you make better decisions.
Problem well defined is a problem half solved, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
It's like, let's figure it out. But the entrepreneurs in us, even if we're accidental entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurs in us are like, I'm a capable problem solver, and we just start jumping on that.
Well, and we've got so many things we're kind of handling, right? We're juggling different things. We're making decisions fast, and we just kind of get into this mode of just make a decision and go, make a decision and go. And I find that the more you scale, the more people you're responsible for, the bigger your business gets, you've got to pause it a little bit. Some of those decisions are not best when they're made just fast. Matter of fact, very rarely, if something, if something requires an escalated level of decision making, like if it involves a person, or if it involves even a client, I will oftentimes now say, you gotta give me overnight. Just as a general rule for myself, like slow it down. What questions are you missing? What assumptions are you making? This can last for 12 hours, right? It'll be fine if you solve it in 12 hours instead of jumping in right now. And usually that perspective changes, and it changes in a much smarter way.
So maybe if we're dealing with something that feels like it needs seconds to respond, maybe we can at least stretch that to minutes. Or if it feels like in the next few minutes, maybe it's the next few hours or whatever. But just give a little space to get curious, ask good questions, figure it out before we just knee-jerk react.
If we do that, we're going totally off of emotion, and we've got our blinders on, because when we have quick reactions, it's all from our perspective. Our own perspectives 100% cloud whatever judgments we're making. And so if we don't give enough time to sit down and remove that, whatever decision we make is clouded with our own prejudices or biases.
It's really, really well said. So you mentioned in this specific example of the team member who was leaving, and you had assumptions. You sat down with him doing an exit interview. And I just want to call that out as a practical practice, because a lot of business owners don't make a habit of doing exit interviews. And while, at some point it's like, well, they're leaving, what good is it to talk to them? But there's a lot of valuable insight. There was a lot of unspoken going on before that. Some
of the best information will come when they're leaving, because there's nothing to lose.
Yeah, the risk is gone for them, right? And not that we're like, we're not like hunting for negative stuff to drum up, but it is a valuable perspective in a moment of time that doesn't come that often. So let's at least take that opportunity to get a little curious and learn some things so we can be better.
Well, I'll tell you a couple of things I've learned in exit interviews, and I don't do the exit interviews anymore. One of the things, with scaling is we have an HR director that's in here and does it. I think that's even better, quite frankly, because people will speak to a third party, right? Or to an HR person, maybe even more honestly and directly than they'll speak to an owner. And so having that degree of separation actually has some real benefits to it. But a couple of the things that we've learned that have been telling, one of the biggest ones, honestly, a couple of people have left and they said, you know what, like, I knew I wasn't doing a good job. I knew I wasn't doing a good job. I was just waiting for you to tell me. And I'm like, we're so badly want people to like us. And we just think, we're just going to coach up and give them another chance and give them the benefit of the doubt. And we just put up with stuff and we get irritated and resentful. But when somebody's leaving on an exit interview and they're like, I know, I just wanted you to tell me, why didn't you tell me? I knew it. And that one sticks with me. And whenever we're coaching team members, we keep coming back to this idea of you've got to be direct and make sure they know what the expectation is. Be direct in your language, and almost without fail, what that leads to sometimes is some really hard conversations with people, maybe even tears, right? But our success at up-leveling somebody when we're willing to have those conversations directly, I can't even believe what a huge difference that makes in somebody, because they're either out the door right then, or they get significantly better faster than you even thought they could.
I think you're absolutely right. And I was sitting there thinking, boy, I wish there was some magical way in a podcast or conversation like this to just have little, $ bubbles that start to go like, how much would be saved in turnover or onboarding costs if we could figure out how to have better coaching or leveling up conversations with our people. It's significant money, but we have a hard time taking some of these, people issues or people conversations and translating them to dollars. But if you could put if you could put a price tag on, I don't know how much money you've saved by developing people and not just having, churn and burn people and bring some new ones in and get the old ones out. Like, have you guys done any sort of analysis on what kind of money you save?
There's a lot of studies out there on what it costs to hire and train somebody. And we've had a really big focus on our internal training program. And so we've looked at some of that. I mean, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, really. That's not an exaggeration. But to me, so our purpose, it's on a big mural in the wall in our office, is we elevate people and businesses, right? We're a digital marketing company. We build websites and run Google Ads, but the purpose, the thing that gets me out of bed in the morning, is to elevate people and businesses. And so for me, yeah, the dollar cost is a big deal, but I have seen people in our companies literally, it's changed the trajectory of their whole entire life. And that, I mean, you can't put a dollar sign on that, right? When you've got somebody that they started working for you, 6, 7, 8 years ago, and they couldn't have a phone conversation, they couldn't complete a task. I mean, to all of a sudden be like, they're leading a team, they're talking to Fortune 500 companies, they've got confidence, like that's awesome.
In Blackfoot, Idaho.
Yes.
I'm just kidding. That's
it's
so
true.
Great. Well, as you think about your scaling journey, are there any other like really significant pain points that you remember? Like, we were just getting stuck, or I was getting stuck in the way I was leading, and I had this breakthrough. I'd love to share one more little breakthrough.
So probably, this is the other thing that's just made a huge difference to us, is as our team started to grow, and it started to grow really fast. And all of a sudden, like, we would think we were being so professional and so smart, and we'd send out a memo, right? Like, hey, we have a new policy, and we send out this memo. And next thing you know, our team is just freaking out. Everybody is just upset. And we're like, this is not a big deal, right? Like what is going on? And the bigger the team got, this was happening all the time. So remember I said, when something happens all the time and you're like, I keep hearing this is happening, you got to do something different. And one of my friends says, well, what are your personality styles in your office? And I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, well, I do this. Let me disk your whole office and see what your personality styles are. And he did that, and it came back that 3 of us, me, Michael, Derek, right, and one other, Michael Tamanaga, who's a vice president, been with us for a long time, we had very outgoing personalities, ID personality styles. Every other person in our office, every single other person we had hired were the complete opposite of us. They were, SC personality styles, more introverted. And when I learned that, I was like, we're freaking them out every time we do this. And I just thought, we must drive them crazy, right? Our personalities must absolutely drive them crazy. And that meant we had to get really clear on who we were. Like, what is my personality style? How does that come across to other people? And we started training that company-wide. And so before you ever even start working here, you're going to get a personality assessment. Day 1 of your training, you're going to sit in a DISH training, and we're going to teach you about different personality styles and understanding your own and how to communicate. Whenever you go into our Slack channel where we communicate with each other, you'll have Katie Harris, and then you'll have DI personality style. So no matter where I go, I always know what somebody's personality style is. And the very first time you're in some sort of a conflict with someone, the first thing you stop back and think, okay, what is my personality style? What is theirs? And almost always you see what that conflict is right out of the bat. And so, okay, if I can adjust the way I'm communicating, this is going to go a whole lot better. And that right there probably has done more to scale our team than having our vision clearly articulated for everybody, number 1. Number 2, understanding our own personality styles and each other's personality styles. I love it when I walk down and somebody's telling me, oh yeah, well, we disagreed on how to do this, but I'm a D personality and she's a C, right? And I'm like, that's right. Because now it's not personal, right? It's not insulting. It's just like, hey, we're kind of having a challenge here because I'm this way and she's that way. And so we're working it out. And I'm like, I love that. I love that so much because that follows us home at night, right? That goes home in our relationships and in our parenting and in everything we do. And so that when somebody starts to get really super clear on just their own, and then if all you understand about somebody else is the greatest fear of different personality styles, you can pretty much improve relationships right out of the gate.
Well, there you are again, elevating people and businesses. Just did it again. Well, I'm fascinated every time I talk to a wonderful entrepreneur like you, Katie, who, even if you said you sort of accidentally became one, which I can relate to, by the way, you didn't talk to us about client acquisition as the key to scaling. And you didn't talk to us about, the next ERP system or CRM system. And I'm not saying any of that's unimportant. But as I talked to you about what were some of the challenges and how did you work through them, you talked about setting vision, and you talked about really understanding your assumptions and getting curious. And you talked about helping people understand themselves and each other better so we can coordinate this growing group of people, right? Like it's interesting how often it comes back to some of these people things. To be fair, you did say at the beginning, we need scalable systems more, and sometimes that's systems for some of those functional areas, but
for sure.
But then we went into examples about hiring and other people related stuff. So I'm just always fascinated when we talk to somebody who's been in a fast growing company, who's been one of those top places to work. It often comes back to some of these people and leadership lessons that make the difference. So thank you for sharing this.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for letting me. Love it. So it really is, it really has been fun to get that vision just secured with everybody. And it just makes everybody row in the same direction, right? That's how you scale a business. That's how you build a team, is you get everybody rowing in the same direction. And all of a sudden, the speed at which you can do stuff is just exponential.
Yeah, well said. Okay, so Katie, if people want to connect with you on social or learn more about either or both of your businesses, how would they best do that?
Yeah, you bet. So our websites are getfoundfirst.com and spotonsolutions.com. And then I'd love to connect with everybody on LinkedIn. It's just Katie Harris. I think it's Idaho is what my tag is up there on LinkedIn. So I'd love to connect with you there.
All right, that's awesome. And tell us one more time about your Uncommon Results book. I want to make sure that people can find that.
Yeah, you bet. So I just was able to author one chapter. My chapter in that is Believe in Big Things. I get to come out and be with you here in just a couple weeks. And that's the very first thing I'm going to start off by talking about. When you really build a dream team, is you have to believe in big things. And the name of the book is Uncommon Results, Secrets and Strategies of High Performance Entrepreneurs.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for being here, Katie. And to all of you listening, thanks for being with us on the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast. Please share it with as many seven-figure business owners as possible. We want to share the lessons learned from real entrepreneurs like Katie, like you, and help as many as we can. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast with your host, Brett Gilliland. Be sure to leave a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. You may also want to visit our website, eliteentrepreneurspodcast.com, to find additional resources to grow your business from 7 figures to 10 million and beyond.